I have the thermostat behind me, so I don't know what's going to happen. So, good afternoon, everybody. Hello. Some of you have been here. Some of you are being welcomed back. It's good to see all of you. Hey, Mark, how are you? Good to see you. Good, good. Thanks for being here. The leadership team appreciates your attendance here. This is an important subject, and I'm going to do my best to kind of not turn my back to anybody, but the way this is situated. So you're going to hear about this multiple times over the course of the semester, over the course of this week in different venues. And it's one of those things because it's such a change for the district, you can't hear it enough probably. Now, that might not be true for people that have been working on it for the last year. Maybe they're tired of hearing it and talking about it. But it is something that we have to kind of, as a collective, own and understand and let it sink in. So obviously, what we're talking about is a revamped governance model. And let's talk about why a year ago, when I came into the position as CEO, one of the first things I did was to actually approach Dr. Meiske about revamping our governance model and whether she'd be willing to take the lead on coordinating our efforts to reform how decisions are made here on campus. And, you know, actually this idea of a governance council, I'm going to give credit to Rebecca Ike, who no longer works at the college, but back when she was Senate president, and I worked with her. She looked into this and had a strong interest in somehow or another improving upon decision-making and transparency in decision-making. And it really is just a matter of how and when that could happen. And so she's not here, but many thanks to her for just planting that seed because it worked with me. And I had conversations with administrators at the time, and they were interested. And so when I came into this position, it's one of the first things I knew that I wanted to start dialoguing about as it related to campus processes and governance. For those of you that have known me a long time, I'm kind of a governance guy. You know, when you become full-time faculty, you have to decide what kind of trajectory you're taking. And I went to the academic senate immediately, and they never got rid of me until I took this position, and I was involved in policy and governance. And so it's something that's, I believe, is important because it has to do with the climate here on campus and how we arrive at decision making. So basically over the last year, we had the college planning team meetings that were co-chaired by Daylene and I. We used those to hold a series of brainstorming sessions with stakeholder leaders, administrators, classified faculty, et cetera, to find out, you know, to gain their input and their collaboration into the idea of developing a new governance model. And that model, I believe, was proven to be necessary upon our first few conversations, because when we asked people to describe, people that have been here for quite a long time, how are decisions made here on campus, they couldn't really describe the process, right? People had different anecdotal experiences, they had different perspectives, and the processes all differed based on what the actual subject matter was. There are and have been processes, and there will continue to be those existing processes to a great degree. But it was not clear. We have and have had a decision-making guide, the DMG, that has been continually updated. It actually is a useful tool because it has an enormous amount of content and information in it, but it does not set forth an understanding of how decisions are made here on campus. Okay, it basically says here's what the Senate does, and you know, here's what the operational teams do, and so forth. Here's what PAC-B does, and here's the flow charts of governance in different areas, and so forth. And so what we're really trying to get at is having a very comprehensive and digestible governance model, right? Now, it started off as a governance council. It's now a governance model. And so as we realized that people didn't know what had existed, there was no uniform agreement. We know moving forward, this is our opportunity to make everyone aware. But it's going to take time, it's going to take work, and it's going to take buy-in, right? That's what we're starting this semester, because what we did for the whole year was have leadership plan what this might look like. And or what did we arrive at, 11 versions? Is that
We're on the 12.
12, I'm sorry, 12. We're on 12 versions. And what that means is from where we started on day one to now, that it's actually quite intellectually fulfilling, because you get everyone in a room and they go through role playing and case studies, and you say, what happens if this type of proposal goes through a governance council, et cetera, et cetera. And then you realize where there's pitfalls and blind spots and so forth. That will continue to happen. As Daleen will explain, this next year is going to be rollout. We just spent the last year designing rollout, reflection. Again, kind of like SLOs, we're assessing, how well we're doing and how we can tweak the model moving forward. Okay. One of the things is that we're not here to replace. Let's just make sure we understand what we're talking about. When we talk about a governance model here, what you'll hear from us is we're not replacing existing processes that are already in place, especially those handed down by Title V or Ed Code, but well-established processes. So certainly the Senate has its processes. It has its 10+1. Classified Senate has its processes, right? The budget has its processes. Staffing committees have their processes. We're not stepping on those. What we are doing is we are providing a larger framework from which or for which proposals that are largely district-wide proposals, they might not all be district-wide proposals, that's where you send them to be vetted and discussed through collaboration. Now, some of those things that you'll see that are proposed might end up being something that should be redirected to I'll just say to the Academic Senate or to PAC-B or something like that. And that's part of the governance model as well, making sure that it doesn't take up work it shouldn't. Okay. So we know that there's a lot of ideas, innovation. There's a procurement for ideas and always has been in the culture of COC, and we're proud of that. But we need to have transparency from beginning to end, right? We don't want to say from cradle to grave, I don't know how but essentially to fruition, when we bring something to fruition. And so not only was this a good idea, period, I think, for this college, it ended up being timely when I came into this position, because on the heels of the May 2024 climate survey that said a lot of things. But one of the things we saw quite a bit there was that people wanted to feel as though when they spoke up, it meant something. It wasn't performative, they were being heard, okay? And that there's transparency in decisions, even if they're decisions of rejection, right? That there's somehow or another a culture of accountability to senior leadership decisions. That needs to happen, and that we feel as though we built that into this model, okay? So it is not the result of the climate survey that we're doing this. It happens to be, as I already mentioned, Rebecca Ike and the past that's happened in terms of this idea, it fits nicely to the climate survey and to improving the climate, because it speaks to everything we do here at the district, which is making sure that people are heard, right? People are respected, and that leadership is held accountable for its decisions, right? Obviously, when Daleen replaces me up here and starts going through the slides, which we'll all jump in on, those of us on the leadership team that have been working on this, she's going to thank people that have been integral to this process. But I'm going to thank Daleen right now because of her strategic mindset. She's a strategic planner. She's always been at the forefront of our strategic designs here on campus. And so we wouldn't be here without her. So many thanks, please. Thank you. So I think that what's interesting also is, and Daleen will touch on this, is that we have a lot of committees here. And we know that, and we have more committees than other colleges. And when Daleen speaks to you, she'll also talk about what it looks like at other colleges that don't have a quote unquote governance council model or what have you. And why this is necessary, because we have so many committees and we need to somehow or another, there's many phases to this. We need to continue to assess committees, collapse committees into them to one another, streamline them. So there's a lot going on in terms of that can still take place. And we look forward to your input as we move forward with rolling this out this semester. So I think that ultimately, what we're hoping to achieve here is respect, inclusivity, transparency, and these are tough things that are going to go through the governance council. They might be fun things, they might be people will be heard, and that when the ultimate decision is made, the CEO and leadership, but ultimately the CEO, will have to explain why the decision was made in the way that it was. And the hope is that even if someone is, for example, disappointed with the outcome, that it will not be just a decision without a rationale. That there'll be some narrative, some context to why the decision was given a yes or a no, or great idea, it's going to take 3 years, we're not there yet, et cetera, et cetera. It really is meant, no one at this college gets everything they want. It's just not going to happen. Many things come to fruition, many things do not. The whole idea is no matter what the outcome is, that there's an audit trail to where all stakeholders on campus can essentially say, I can point to that and find out what the final outcome was and why. And that, we hope, not only is good governance for this institution and any organization, higher ed or otherwise, but essentially is a major response to the climate survey findings, which are multifaceted, but this is a big one in this sense. So I think I covered everything I wanted to get to. Good night. Okay, I cut into our time.
You're fine.
Then turn it over to Daleen. And we have this mic here, and if we need to pass it around to anybody that's been involved, we'll be sure to do it.
Did Sean already leave? Yeah, I can.
Am I gonna-
Try it again. Oh, there we go. I was
I was gonna tease Sean because I said the second you walk out of the room, it's gonna stop working. So thank you, David, for those comments and framing the conversation that we're gonna have today. David did touch on the fact that governance models look a little different across the state, but the model that we are working on and will be implementing is very similar to what you will see at many institutions. They just might have some different names that are used. So for example, we have Shared Governance Council, which is the final kind of stop, and I'll show you that in a minute. There are similar names such as Shared Consultation Council, College Council, Governance Council. So you will see that. And then the other thing that's similar is they all have operational committees like we do. Technology committee, you have academic senate work. So there's some similarities that we share, but as David noted, what we don't share with many is the number of committees that we have, committees or work groups or task forces. So there's about 80 plus give or take, depending on which list you're looking at. So that's a lot. And things can just kind of sprout up and take hold, and then it becomes, a committee or a work group that may or may not be really connected to the structure. And so we want to kind of streamline that. So that's really what we're doing with this work. And without doing that, it leads to confusion. As David said, like confusion over like, where do I go? Or I had this idea and then it just kind of died. Didn't really go anywhere. So that creates frustration for folks. We're really trying to kind of streamline that process. And David said, make it more transparent and easy for folks to know where do they go with that idea and how does it move forward. So I'm going to give you a little context setting, and then I'll go over what the model is, the model rendering. I'm actually going to step out now to show you this. So I'm going to go over the model rendering, the initiation form that we have established and what that process looks like. And then what does and does not go through the model. That's like a very popular question that we get. And alignment of existing committees. This is not our first time, by the way, to try to do this alignment work. We started that in 2019. There was a big retreat, committee on committees retreat. Yes, we had, if you're new, yes, we had a committee on committees to try to bring everything together and improve communication. So we're okay, we're moving forward. And then Lisa Hooper and Michael Mansour will both speak to the role of the Academic Senate and Classified Senate in this model. And we're gonna have an example of what this looks like in action from Jasmine. Dr. Jasmine Rise will walk us through a fraudulent enrollment. She actually went through the process in terms of submitting the form, go over some next steps, and then we'll have an opportunity for Q&A. So for those of you who are online, please submit your questions, and we have a couple of folks that are monitoring those questions, and then we will go over that at the end. So as David mentioned, I'm going to acknowledge some folks. So when we started really diving into this work as part of college planning team, we got the go-ahead to create just a small task force so that we could kind of do that work and help bring it forward to the committees. As we were going along. So I want to, you can see the names up there. I want to acknowledge these folks, as well as the college planning team, Equality Squared committee. So that's institutional effectiveness and inclusive excellence. If you're new or don't know, executive cabinet, academic senate, classified senate, and the ASG. We've been to all of those groups and they provided great feedback. So with this model, essentially what we're trying to do is maximize our institutional effectiveness through a new governance structure that streamlines and improves decision-making while integrating the strategic plan implementation, coordination, and outcomes. That's something that we've made good strides on. We have a long-standing history of solid, good planning, good IR, data analysis, and things like that. But not everything comes together as neatly as it can to really push things forward and advance us. And so by doing this, I think that we will be headed in an improved direction, building on the foundation that we have. The important thing that I want to note here is that when we set out to do this work, we established guiding principles. This is the very same thing that we did as part of institutional effectiveness and inclusive excellence when we undertook the Canyons Completes, or you might have heard guided pathways used. When we started that work, there was a big effort. That committee operated for 10 years. You'll hear a little bit more about that in a minute. But we established guiding principles that we could kind of anchor ourselves to as we were moving forward to improve the student experience. We did the same thing here for the governance model. So you can see there, the top one is to design for function and not the people we have right now. We want this model to be able to outlast the people who are kind of the founding folks that are serving on these groups. We also want a model that acknowledges and demonstrates the college's commitment to inclusion, diversity, equity, anti-racism, and accessibility. We also want to be able to engage our constituent groups In the redesign, which we did through office hours, so in addition to, as you saw in the prior slide, the committees and the groups that we went to also held open office hours for other folks to come in and provide input and ask questions. Mentioned earlier, streamlining the current structure, really addressing top-down nature of decision-making and being more inclusive, less siloed in our decision-making. Furthermore, we wanted to encourage a culture of openness to redirect efforts in response to our evolving needs of the college. We also want to provide opt-in options for different groups to kind of weigh in on topics that are outside their respective areas that may have an impact on their groups. And I think you're going to see how we do that in the model. And demonstrate how the work within the structure aligns with our strategic goals of the college and helps us move towards measurable progress in our work. This one I'll hover on for a minute, acknowledging our fears, opportunities, and advantages. I recognize, and we recognize, that this college has gone through quite a bit over the past year. And it's a season of transition. It's continuing to be a season of transition. And so we recognize that. People will have questions. We ask that you reach out if you have any questions, need clarification, because this is a change, and this is a change we're all embarking on together. So we do acknowledge that there will be some, fears, but there's also some great opportunities and advantages when we come together to do this work. And last but not least, this is one that we used in IE Quantity Squared, and we're holding to this one on this model as well. Not let the perfect become an enemy of the good. Ideally, I would have this all packaged with a nice little bow, but there's still going to be some refinement, which you will see in years 2 and years 3. So we ask that you kind of lean in with us, come along and with us and provide input and be willing to kind of dive in with us. I mentioned that we've gone through many groups. I just wanted to give you an at a glance. This wasn't just one meeting or two. The blue dots and the blue squares with the dots represent all the places where conversations happen, starting in September and leading up until now. So quite a big representation of folks that have weighed in on the process. We will be having a video coming soon. Thank you to Wendy and team who's working on that. Wendy Trujillo and team are working on a promo video to kind of give a quick summary of what this new model is. It's coming soon. Until then, we will go with the graphic and I will walk you through this. So the model essentially has, if you look at the middle, has 3 main teams. We call these project advancement teams. Now, in other colleges, you may see them referred to as a council or some other name. At one point, we were PALs. The project advancement liaisons were overseeing those. And then we landed on, no, these are project advancement teams. And within those teams, you'll see below the main title, you'll see 2 thematic areas. And so, for example, under planning and institutional effectiveness, that particular team deals with things that pertain to like fiscal strategy and institutional integrity. And then under student success and inclusive excellence, that team takes up matters that are instructional related and student services related. If you're familiar with institutional effectiveness and inclusive excellence team and the work that that committee did, that's largely landing in what is the student success and inclusive excellence team. And then under operations, digital infrastructure and physical infrastructure. The work of those groups leads up into the shared governance council. So each of those middle teams can take up routine matters that are committees that are aligned with them. Maybe there are updates from those committees. Those get brought forward as an information item. Routine items such as under student success and inclusive excellence, the student equity and achievement plan. That is something that comes up as part of our routine work that we do and has to be revised. That is an item that they will take up as part of their work. And then that would funnel up to when they're ready with that particular plan, that funnels up to Shared Governance Council for a final review, and then on. And that particular one will be coming up this year because it's time to renew that one. And then as David mentioned earlier, anything, once it reaches Shared Governance Council, the CEO, they are making recommendations, which we'll walk you through this process, that they make recommendations to the CEO. And then decisions that the CEO can make on their own are made. The decisions that need to go to the board will go to the board. I'm going to go to the far left side. How do ideas get brought forward? I mentioned routine items. Those teams will be handling sending routine items forward or information items to Shared Governance Council as needed. But what if you have an idea and you want to send something forward to be considered, which Jasmine will walk us through. Well, hers is a little different, but Jasmine would be starting the process initiation form. So you can see that blue box says routine business, committee work, or project initiation form. So now I want to talk about the project initiation form. You can submit an idea, and Jasmine will walk us through kind of what she did at what we call kind of the stage one of that, submitting an idea. But you can access that form, and then that form will come to myself, to the CEO, look at it and determine kind of which way it goes, kind of air traffic control. Which area does it belong in? And then that group then takes it up. We'll walk through that more in just a minute, but I want to just give you a kind of an at a glance of what that looks like. And yes, we are on version 12. And thank you again to graphics. I need to acknowledge the folks in graphics because they worked on, they took, and thank you first to Michael Mansour for helping kind of draft the initial. And we got it to a point where it was as good as we were going to get it, and then we passed it off and they finished the rest of the work. I want to give you an idea of who's serving as the point person, so you know who you could reach out to if you have questions on a particular team. For the planning institutional effectiveness, it's myself and Jason Hinkle who will serve as the chairs. And then for student success and inclusive excellence, Dr. Jasmine Rice, Dr. Thea Alvarado. And then for the operations team, Dr. Jim Temple and Aaron Tate will be heading up those teams. And then for Shared Governance Council, that has the CEO, so David, Academic Senate President Lisa Hooper, and Classified Senate President Michael Mansour. With this model, we're trying to achieve clarity and consistency by having charters that are similar across in terms of the structure of the charters. And academic Senate folks and faculty are very familiar with this because the Academic Senate does this very well. And so we've adopted that and applied it to charters. We have a standardized agenda, standardized meeting minute template. So hopefully it makes it easy, no matter which team you're trying to plug in with and find out where things are with a particular item, it will be easy to follow. We are working on the revised governance handbook. It is drafted, but we are still editing it. Remember I said not let the perfect become an enemy of the good. So that is in draft form right now. And as David said, borrowed the things that were really important to bring forward from the prior decision-making guide. If you're not familiar with it, nearly 200 pages in that decision-making guide, the former one, which has some good content that we can bring forward. And now we're just updating where we need to. Obviously, the first part of it is much shorter. So it kind of gets you to the point of how this governance model works. And then the appendices will have all the supporting information about the role of Classified Senate, Academic Senate, what constitutes a committee, what constitutes a work group, a task force. And the new committees and work groups, this is where we have an opportunity to improve. Before, things could just kind of spring up, right? A new committee, new work group, and it would be a new thing. And we're all trying to figure out where does it get connected with our structure. So now the way this will work is you'll hear in Jasmine's example, when Jasmine has the fraudulent enrollment idea, she's going to need a task force, and she did need a task force. I won't go into too much detail, but she'll need a task force, right, to kind of work through the details of that particular topic. So then that team kind of charters, if you will, and sponsors that work group to get started. And then it will, when that work is done, that group goes away. And there may be situations where it warrants a complete new committee. But until I think we get through the next year, this current year, 25-26, we're not going to know what that is yet. We're still working through the committee structure. I feel like you're.
I just want to jump on the committee thing that about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the district hired a consultant to see how we could streamline committees. And it didn't really result in any changes that were significant. Some, but nothing entirely significant. I just wanted to mention the fact that, you know, as we all know, or many of us know, that in governance that the public administration and government is very horizontal and business is often very vertical. When we have Senate, we have Title V, we have union CBAs, we have so much that goes on here. And in other words, there has to be collegial consultation with the Senate, there has to be collaboration. And so the way you do that is, quite frankly, collaboration through committees. So it is easy to have a proliferation of committees. And what we need to work on, and Dalene's already said this, I just want to reemphasize this, is which committees we have now that we don't need. We've already identified some, which can be collapsed into others, but there will be a need for new committees. And so I don't want people to think that when we create new committees, like, well, you know, they contradicted themselves. They're going out there and they're expanding and creating more committees. There's no way to have collaboration, transparency, and make sure we get inclusiveness from everybody unless you have committees. The question is, what is the rubric for creating new committees, and what do we need to do now to get rid of committees that are unnecessary? So I'm going to jump in every now and then and just emphasize things that I think are pretty important to me to kind of make clear the second or third time. Thank you, Dave.
I think we just got the mood lighting. I'm not sure. Sorry.
It's the governance. It doesn't.
Don't go to sleep though. If you need a coffee, go get some coffee. So I'm going to walk through just an at a glance again, so that you have a little bit more context for each of those teams. I touched on it a little bit, but you've got the Shared Governance Council. And I mentioned earlier, each of the charters has a purpose, a strategic charge. And then it will also list the membership. And what we're asking is for 2-year terms so that we can have some continuity with folks that are serving. And so what you're seeing on the screen is what we need to fill, in this case, the Shared Governance Council. We are working with Lisa for faculty appointments, Michael Montour and Andrea Varney for the appointments for the classified professionals. And we're working with ASG for the appointments for their group. And we're working with the Management Leadership Association, or managers who are non-executive cabinet members, working with appointments for from their group as well. So this is Shared Governance Council. Really, as I mentioned earlier, it takes recommendations and other projects that have come forward from the other project advancement teams. They review them, and then each of those constituent groups that's represented will be able to provide feedback to the CEO, and I'll show you that at the end of Jasmine's presentation of her slides. And then we have planning and institutional effectiveness. So again, this is institutional integrity, fiscal matters, but this is really, think about planning, strategic planning. Accreditation is one that aligns with this, but that it has its own, as you know, work group or task force that Dr. Thea Alvarado leads up. So those are the types of things that come through your program review. So Erica, I'll go get plugged in. So program review chair is on there. So we talk about those types of topics in that group. And let me back up for 1 second. I want to note this. You will, if you're noticing on the bottom, there's a resource list. And it was intentional to have PIO represented because of Mark, so I've heard an endorsement from somebody in here. So having that represented is really important for continuity, communication. They've been deeply involved from the beginning, and they will continue to be a resource on those groups as well. And then we have student success and inclusive excellence. Again, this is looking at the student success, instructional matters that are really aligned very much with what institutional effectiveness and inclusive excellence did, which was looking at the student experience from the moment, pre-applying to completion and transfer or entering the workforce or upskilling. So that's a big group in terms of the topics they will be covering. And then we have operations. So again, this is covering matters that are physical infrastructure as well as digital infrastructure. And you can see the list of folks that are named there. And you will notice sometimes it's not just an at-large classified faculty adjunct that's named or non-executive cabinet managers, but it's actual positions because of what they do and the importance to the conversations that will be had in that particular team. So those positions have been named. So how did we do this? How did we align everybody? This is a very simplified version. If you were at the committee chairs meeting that we have a more complex one that you can imagine PIO and marketing where like you can't have all that on a very simple handout. So we came to an agreement that we would streamline this, and not everything is listed here, but these are the groups that will be aligned with those particular teams. That just because somebody's not on this list doesn't mean that they aren't aligned. And I want to give you an example. So the work that like MESA does. MESA is an important program and service on our campus. Most of their work or things that impact them are going to touch on or be aligned with student success and inclusive excellence. So they might be serving on there. I don't know yet if they're going to be named as serving on there, but they could certainly get plugged into those meetings and be, connected with that particular team. Or if they have an idea, they know that they're going to align there. They can ask their questions to Dr. Alvarado and Dr. Wright. So that's what that looks like. And the note at the bottom, if you're not able to see it well from wherever you're sitting, says that work products that come from the classified Senate and the academic Senate and other committee groups that are not represented will provide updates to the appropriate project advancement team as needed, or the project advancement teams may ask, hey, can we get an update from what your committee is doing? So that will be taking place over this next year. And now I'm going to transition to kind of defining what does it look like when you're going through the project initiation form. There are key terms that are important to note here. One is a project steward. So what you're going to hear in just a minute, Jasmine is the project steward on the project that she will be sharing with you all. And they submit the idea or the project, and then it gets assigned to a project advancement team, which I've just covered. So those folks then become kind of the liaison between the initiator of the idea or the project and the Shared Governance Council. So when the work is done there with the project advancement team, it advances to the Shared Governance Council. So those are some key terms to keep in mind as we work through the example that Jasmine's going to walk us through.
Daleen, can I jump in?
Of course.
On the previous slide. One of the things I talked to Daleen quite a bit about and the steering committee was what I often refer to as the human dynamic of any organized structure of decision-making or any organization, that everything can look good on paper, but so what, right? I mean, we can say that about anything. We could say that about the United States Constitution. We could say about anything. On paper, it looks great. What does it mean? How does it live? Right? How is it implemented? How is it honored? And so for the PATS and for the Shared Governance Council, we have charters, right? And what we did midway through this process was to ensure that that human dynamic is accounted for, that we don't make an assumption that someone's going to know what to do, right? If they're, the VP of Business Services, or the VP of Instruction, the CEO, or anybody else at any step of the way. To Daleen's point, we didn't create this for people that we know. We created it for position based on what the obligations and duties are of each one of those positions that plays a role in this governance model. And so we drafted as a group, charters for each one of these steps. So that, again, standing the test of time, let's just fast forward 7 years from now. There'll be people that have left this college and new people in place, and they understand what is expected of them. Because what we know is from the climate survey, not for all, but for many, there was an issue of trust, right? In terms of how decisions were made. And we needed to account for that in this model to make sure that people that typically, the higher up you go, right, as VPs or managers or whatever, you have more say and more control over matters, that they have an obligation to make sure they're running their project advancement teams, the shared governance council, and every step of the way, they're running it in a way with a declared set of expectations that anyone on campus can refer to and say, this is what's expected of you at this point in the governance model. Not just that you are a trusted colleague and you have title, that's good enough. Unfortunately, it's not good enough for anyone. Right? That if we're going to build it for this test, to stand the test of time, we need to make sure that we account for that human dynamic where people, even inadvertently, without any ill intent, make assumptions. They make assumptions like, that was clear, right? No, we want to make sure that it's good. And those things will be refined in the next year or two as well. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. So this is a perfect segue then, following on David's comments, and he was talking about the tracking that happens too. So we'll start at the top. You see the step one is the initiator, which I was describing before. It starts if you have a new idea or a project that you want to be submitted through the process. You start at step one with the initiation form, then it goes to the pathway assignment, then the project or idea gets delegated to the right team. And then there's kind of a development phase that happens, and then it goes to the Shared Governance Council. And then kind of the closing the loop is there's a communication, as we've been saying, that is sent back. So that initiator knows what the decision was. Most likely they've been tracking, because if I'm an initiator, I'm probably going to the meeting. I will have been tracking, but nonetheless, there is a documented outcome, and that's communicated. And we are going to be collecting any of the ideas that are submitted, even ones that don't get approval. We want to track that. That's an important part of our institutional knowledge, because it might be a not now for various reasons, but it might get to come back through, and we don't want folks to have to start from scratch. So how do you find the link? So you do need to go onto the intranet, and at the top, you'll see campus committees, and then there's a shared governance section or committee that's on there. That's a placeholder, so that I could go ahead and embed that link there. And you will click on, there's two ways you can do it. You can copy and paste the link, or, thank you, Michael. We have, if you go under the committee general documents, you can just click on that link and it will launch from there. But that is where that lives right now. We will have a website coming soon. We're working on that, but when we have that, that would just be accessible from there. It would take you straight to this page of the intranet. So that's how one would access the form. And if in doubt, email me and I will help you. What does and does not go through the model? So we've kind of touched on this a little bit. Things that are district and or campus-wide initiatives or efforts would go through the model. Proposals and ideas that might impact other functional areas would also go through the model. New support programs, including grant opportunities that have a broad impact on the college operations. And then information or items that are routine or regular business items, they won't necessarily go through the form that I was just walking you through that process, but they would get submitted. So the the project advancement teams, they have a form where they can submit something forward for Shared Governance Council. So what does not go on here? Academic Senate matters that are routine matters. The same goes for classified Senate 9+1. Routine matters, union collective bargaining agreements, that does not belong in the model. Day-to-day operational management of your areas does not go through the model. Staffing, scheduling, routine personnel matters do not. Legal or regulatory compliance, event planning, and campus activities. So Paul, not star party. Yes. Paul excited. Anything that's an emergency or urgent operational decisions. And then when in doubt, just submit. Yeah. Go ahead on this one. Go ahead. Yeah. It's online, won't be able to-
Can you provide more clarity on the including grant opportunities?
A great example right now is, and this has been talked about at the college for a while, programs like Puente, right? That has a broad impact on the campus. So that one, and I know it's come up recently, so my recommendation is if that is something that folks want to have heard and then it needs to go through the model, because that's going to have a broad impact, a program like Puente. So something like that would go through.
Not a grant that like an individual.
No, I'm talking about broad impact because that is going to have facility impacts and there's a lot of other requirements for a program like that. So something like that would go through. And yeah, when in doubt, just submit, or if you have a question, just email me. I've had this happen already where somebody was not sure and I knew the answer right away. I knew where they needed to go and it wasn't through the model because it's academic Senate matter. So rather than waste anyone's time, I just said, go ahead and you'll go here rather than sending it through the model. And then we do have a disclaimer because administration might have to make decisions outside the process that's for the betterment of the district. But in those instances, the CEO shall communicate why the decision was made. So going back to transparency, understanding why a decision was made. So when that is done, we have called out what is to be done at that time. Do you want to say anything else to that, David?
That disclaimer exists in other board policies and administrative procedures. If there's something that's mandated, if it's time sensitive, and the question, and a lot of those procedures, 10+1, require that the CEO report back and explain why the CEO took the position it did in the timeline that it did. So that's not like something new to the district. The other thing is, to be clear, we have the Board of Trustees. We have Trustee Fred Arnold here. Thank you for being here. But we have the Board of Trustees, we have the CEO, and they have delineated duties. And no one is trying to take away from any delineated duties that already exist, right? Board policy, administrative procedure. The CEO is delegated an enormous amount of discretion. That's their job, to run the district. However, how they run the district matters. How they run the district matters. This model is not meant to somehow or another undermine the board policies and procedures that delegate authority to the CEO and or the CEO's delegates. What it is meant to do is create a process by which those decisions that are made are clear and collaborative and transparent. That's what is necessary. Also, I want to thank Michael Mansour, who is the one that really said, look, let's not just have a does and does not list because we don't want people to think they have to memorize everything. So when in doubt, submit your request and then it will be processed. Now, it might go somewhere that you didn't think it was going to go, but that itself will have a narrative attached to it as well. So if you're someone that submits something, you're going to have an explanation sent to you as why it went in the trajectory it did, even if you thought it might go in a different direction. Okay, thank you.
Let me take Wendy's question and then I'll get Jasmine right. Dr. Rives is going to come up with the example. Just a moment.
Just for clarity, is this just new ideas? Like, for example, at a lot of the other districts, when they have a governance model, things like academic staffing, decisions would come to the council and the council would then decide how those are going to move forward. So is this just new ideas and everything else is still going through the regular stuff?
That's a good question again. I was talking to Jasmine.
Oh. So at other colleges, decisions like staffing come to the council. Is this just new ideas?
Right. So this is new ideas. I mean, honestly, when Wendy, I don't have the answers to every proposal and every scenario. The truth is that the context of anything that happens at a college is so multifaceted, depending on its funding source, depending on its need, depending on to the point of grants, whether it's a district-wide, perceived district-wide, not, perceived as not. And so it's for new ideas, but again, staffing should happen at staffing, right? It should happen that way. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, but ultimately, when something is submitted, it's going to be a learning process for us, maybe not always, but in certain moments, right? Depending on the complexity of the ask. So it depends. That's going to maybe it depends.
Yeah, we hadn't planned on changing that, but I think that as we go forward, you'll see in my last slide, one of my last slides is that refinement period. Initially thinking these new ideas that are coming forward, not disrupting those existing processes, but that'll be a refinement period in year 2 and I think year 3. So as we get started.
Do you want the clicker, Jasmine? Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to take you through what I did for our fraudulent enrollment, and as many of you heard, we've been calling it, oh, never mind, I have a question.
Maybe I missed that. On that prior slide, who's deciding whether something is subject to this or not subject to this? Is that up to the submitter of the idea? Did I miss that?
So it goes to the CEO
Okay.
and myself, and then we're kind of air traffic control. And then when in doubt, I will reach out to the project advancement team leads, or in some cases it may be Lisa or Michael, depending on what it is.
They might need to reach out to the proposing party for more clarity. That's possible too.
We have a question online, so I'm going to take that question right now. Is this LEAP light? No. No. Is this LEAP light? No. No, this is a way to take it through a governance structure so that way, a lot like how LEAP had their different kind of ideas bring through. So maybe the start of it is similar, but the ending and the process and the decision making is not. It would have to go through the governance structure to be able to be determined, is this something we want to do on this campus? Is this something we can afford? Is this something that a specific department could take on? I will give my own opinion since I get the mic right now. There have been many LEAP projects that have landed in student services that we have taken on over the years with no budget and with no extra staff. And so it has been where we have taken those on because they were good things that we wanted to implement. But it would have been wonderful to go through a governance structure to get that staff, to get that budget that goes along with it, so we can do it at the best possible way. So LEAP Light, not so much, but LEAP Start, probably, right? The start of those ideas.
It's way heavier than.
Yeah, it has been way heavier. Okay, so many of you saw my fraudulent enrollments, what we're calling Decepticons, because we're the Autobots and we have to make it fun because otherwise it's depressing. So over the past year, we've been really working hard on fraudulent enrollments to try and stop fraudulent enrollments. But how would that work in our new government structure, in our new governance structure, not our government structure? Because it was just a group we started up. We found a problem. We saw the problem was happening. We quickly got a team together. We went through what are the different scenarios of how we could fight the Decepticons and what can we put into place. Now, how does that work in our new structure? So I would be the person who would say, hey, we've got a problem. There's this issue happening and I want to get a team together. So I went in and I submitted the form and I said, okay, so here's my original submission. This is what it asked for on the form. Who are you? What do you want to talk about? Who are your group members that you're going to be working with on this? Who are you? Which stakeholder group are you? I'm an administrator, so I put that. Is this a new or modified non-academic program or service? That is one of the choices that you have. You have a bunch of choices. What is this? What is it that you're trying to do? And then give a summary. What is it that you're talking about? When I put in that it's fraudulent enrollment, what do I mean by that? So I put in a little summary that in spring 2025 term, we saw a substantial increase in fraudulent applications and enrollments. We want to address those concerns and we need a solution to be able to stop fraudulent enrollments. Then you're gonna put in a priority. How important is this? Is this urgent? Has to be taken care of right this second? Is it high? Is it medium? Is it low? Maybe it's just because I really want to try something new. It's really not a big deal, but I really want to see where this could take us. But for me, I put emergency. This is big. This is huge. I need it to stop now. I can't wait until the fall semester. I can't wait at all. I need it done now. Then what's the justification for this? So I put, we need to stop fraudulent enrollment in our classes. It's preventing our regular students from getting into classes. It's preventing faculty from having full classes. It's putting a strain on our classified staff who are trying to stop them from getting into classes. It's basically a problem for everybody, except for the fraudsters. And then the estimated impact. How is this going to impact everything? So I put in there that fraudulent enrollment can cause the college to report our FTE incorrectly. It could give out financial aid to students who are not real, and it can cause the college to be out of compliance. So to me, all of these things, all that justification, that is an emergency. We all need to get on this right away. So then I hit submit. And the email that I received said, thank you for your submission. Here's what's happening. So it was forwarded. Daleen got the request. It was then forwarded to a project advancement team. Amazingly enough, it came to me in student success. So it just happened to get to my group that needs to solve this. So it went to the chairs, right? And so Thea and I got this email that says, hey, you have a new thing you need to look at. You need to agendize this. So then we're going to say, yes, we agendized it. We're going to go ahead and do that. And then what we have next is the Shared Governance Council agenda form. So we took it in our Student Success and Inclusive Excellence group and we said, yes, we need to move this forward. We all heard it. We got a team going. There's a task force going. Now we're pushing it up to Shared Governance because they need to know about it. Because now we're asking for budget. We're asking for, we need something to put into place. We're going to need something, some kind of technology to put in there. We need staff time to put in there. So we're pushing it up. So then you're going to put in there, when you're filling out the form, you're going to talk about the strengths, any issues to be resolved, any barriers that are being implemented, your opportunities, your project timeline, again, your urgency. If you have any documents, I didn't have any because I did this really quick, but I would have agendas, I'd have minutes, I'd have kind of showing what it is that we've done in the meantime to be able to put in there, and then you're going to put in a final confirmation. This is easy. Sometimes you're looking, oh my gosh, I have to do a full SWOT analysis. No, you don't. Just put in your strengths. We have a great team going to be able to identify fraudulent enrollment. Issues to be resolved, fraudulent enrollment. We have to figure out how to stop them. Some opportunities. We found a technology solution that we think will work. We want to be able to implement it right away. Our project timeline, now. I want to get it done now. I don't have a semester to do this. I need it done fast. It is urgent. Put it in the upload document. So it doesn't have to be like you're putting a ton of information in there. You just need to get it to where now our Shared Governance Council can put an agenda item together. The whole thing, what? They're talking about me up there. The whole thing took me about 10 minutes. And it was just off the top of my head. So it was not a hard thing to do because I was the one who was deciding I need to put something in. Lisa's telling me I'm wrong.
Oh, I'm sure it did take you 10 minutes because the thing had already been resolved by the time you
100%.
practiced this.
Yes,
So-
it had, but that is true. But at the beginning, I knew there was still a problem. I might not have had some of the solutions, but I knew there were still things I needed to do, right? Because it was my idea. Fraudulent enrollment was not my idea. I would not be here if that was the case, but trying to stop it was. Many of people. But that's what we went through with the shoot to fill out the forms, to be able to put them in. So it's not hard, it's not scary, they're pretty quick, easy forms. Michael had built the survey that you're filling out. It really walks you through the steps. You answer some questions and it says next, and then it's going to give you the next screen that kind of shows you what to write next. So it was easy to be able to go through.
I'll say it's friendly too. It says collecting your awesome idea now as it's
Yes.
loading. So thank you, Jasmine, for walking us through it. So I wanted to just clarify the first one that she was showing you, like when she went in and answered the questions about, how urgent is it? Yeah, so this is the one that you as an initiator would be doing, right? This is the stuff you have to fill out, the stakeholder group, the type, the summary, kind of the estimation of impact, cost, things like that. That's what the initiator does. And then, as she said, when it gets to the project advancement team and they are ready, so as the leads, so in this case, it's Dr. Rice and Dr. Alvarado, when they're ready, they go in and they fill out this form, which is kind of the stage 2 of the process. And then I wanted to show you what the final one looks like. So once it goes to Shared Governance Council and that group meets, they review the idea or the project, and then each constituent group that's represented will submit a form. Now, they might have differing opinions within that group that's represented, but they submit one form, and that goes to the CEO for review. And you can see below they rate, does this product or idea have full support, conditional support, and so on. And then there's the optional comment on why that rating was selected. Now, again, there might be some differing opinions. That's where they can capture that in the comment form. But this form was really important in the process because we want the voices to be heard that are representing those groups. And so each one of them will submit in terms of a group. So classified professionals, the ASG representative, and so on.
Question, do we still have a drop down that says other so that there can be a combination of constituent groups? Did we still do that, Michael, or not?
We did still do it.
We did, yeah, it is still
We
in
do still
there.
have it,
Yeah, it is
but
still
I
in
don't
there.
like it.
Okay.
I didn't like it. Okay. Well, because ongoing discussion, what I don't know if it concerns me, but what I'm aware of is the fact that at shared governance, you could have a split, right? It's like at the Supreme Court, you could have different people from liberals that disagree on a particular issue. You could have people from classified that are split, and Michael has to somehow or another represent that. You could have somehow or another a group of people that want to be heard that is somehow or another, administration and faculty, but they don't represent everybody in that group. So all I know is that not everything is clean. Right? Not the managers don't always agree on everything, the VPs don't always agree on everything, and faculty, et cetera, et cetera. So somehow or another, whether it exists, Michael doesn't like that, but somehow or another, I think they appreciate that. And that's something that we're trying to figure out, how to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, even if it's not clean in that way. The other thing I want to say really quick, and that is Jasmine example was, came and there was a big bow wrapped on it and we were ready to go. But it could go to a Pat, and it could be the Pat says the arrow goes back, right? That they need more information. And I think she referenced that, but I just want to be clear that not everything is going to go right away to shared governance. It could just sit there and rest there within an advancement team for discussion. They could go back to the presenter. They could go back to a stakeholder group and say, we're not ready to move this forward. It still might be moved forward, but we don't know if we can move it forward yet unless we have more information, because it'll get shot down anyway. So in other words, at each step, the arrows flow both ways as needed. Hold on, I got it.
So again, for clarity, I want to make sure I'm following your process. So let's just say it was Lisa that submitted, like, oh my gosh, I'm faculty at Senate. We're really struggling with fraudulent student enrollment. So Lisa submits this emergency document, which now goes to Jasmine because that's your area. And Jasmine reads it and says, you know what? I'm not really interested in fraudulent enrollment right now. It's really not too big of a problem. Faculty can continue to deal with it. So Lisa submits it as an emergency, but now it goes to Jasmine. Can Jasmine, when filling out the next set of forms, change the urgency or and say, well, it's really not an emergency for us, so we're going to put it down to a lower priority.
Is, you know what I'm saying? Like, since it's sort of rotating to that next individual, so how does that work in that process?
So I want to be clear though, it's not just the individual. So when we say it gets assigned to them and they will have that conversation about bringing it forward to their team. And if they need more information or there's a reason why it wouldn't go forward with that same priority level, that conversation is supposed to be tracked so that we can have documentation of that.
And that information would then get back to Lisa, who submitted it,
Correct,
right? Some,
correct.
there would be some explanation or narrative
That is
or
correct.
something that would, so Lisa's not like, what happened to it?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
And I know I've got Jeremy and then one more, and then we'll go on to, after this, we've got Lisa and Michael, who will talk about the role of the Senate.
Okay, thank you. So my question is, the representative is rating based off of the value of the constituent on this process. But what weight does that vote have? Because then the final decision is made by the CEO. So, you know, if everyone, while the ratings are all conditional, the CEO can still either turn it down or lift it up. So what weight does this have in the decision-making process?
The weight is rational leadership and people, leaders that listen to their advisors and will be held accountable if somehow or another they go against what is seemingly potentially a consensus that has arrived at their doorstep. Now, maybe for some reason, the CEO feels so strongly about the idea of rejecting any of the recommendations from the Shared Governance Council that they act in that way. They'll have to explain themselves. And if they do so, I mean, there's going to be a chance for everyone to know and weigh in their own minds and their own stakeholder groups what they think of the CEO's decision. I mean, that's just fact. The CEO has to own that decision. Keep in mind that there can be multiple, and there probably would be, multiple narratives or recommendations forwarded to any CEO, and they'll have to decide what they think is best. I think in your example, if I heard you right, it sounds like it's more like, what if it's overwhelmingly in one direction and the CEO just rejects it? The CEO has to own that and there has to be an audit trail. And so there's no doubt about it that at any college, it all ends with the CEO or the board, right? And so when the CEO, this is about providing the CEO as much information as possible so they can make the best decision possible. If there's a collective, you know, kind of, I should say, decision or understanding that the CEO went against essentially multiple stakeholders that were all on the same, the CEO better have a good reason, is what I'm saying.
The weight is the accountability.
The weight is the accountability, right?
The only thing I saw in the forum that was interesting was the optional comments. And that always concerns me because, let's face it, everybody gets busy. And when people are really, really busy, sometimes the tendency is to just run through a checklist really quickly. And if the comments are only optional, then the CEO or the people may not know exactly what the thinking is. Why is it only conditional support? Why is it? So I'm wondering if that optional comment should be mandatory. I mean, if people have to have that transparency and clarity, shouldn't they have to explain why they have their vote?
Thank you for that.
And whether they do that effectively or not, when they do fill it out is a whole other layer.
Thank you for the comment, Linda. We'll take that back to our team, but I'm going to be surprised if we don't have comments. I think we're going to actually have comments, but I understand your point that when folks see the word optional, they may not do it. I understand that. Thank you. Before we transition to Lisa and Michael, I do want to take, there was a question online regarding timeline because some groups, not part of this model right here, may only meet once or twice. And so how long would something take to go through the process? So I will show that after Michael and Lisa talk. I do have a schedule kind of at a glance. So you can see when those are. So hopefully once we get going, folks can anticipate when those meetings are so that if they have something coming forward, then they know when they need to get something submitted and when it would be reviewed. So we'll show that in just a moment, but now I'm gonna turn over to Michael and Lisa.
That's, oh, you got it.
You guys need me to, okay. So, yes, 12 versions, lots and lots and lots of going back and forth to try to figure out what was going to complement our existing structure, but provide that opportunity to streamline decisions and make decisions more transparent. So I do think that this model works or serves to do that. We'll see how it works. To our faculty, campus-wide initiatives are often mandated for us, so we don't often have a lot of discretion, but we could see where there could be some opportunities for things that might be more aspirational rather than sort of required by the chancellor's office or something like that. I think of things like, you know, our sustainability efforts, our community garden. There have been some initiatives that have been brought forth by faculty that are going to touch every part of the campus and that really do need to be vetted in terms of our ability to implement and sustain those sorts of efforts. For the Senate, I see that this could alleviate some redundancy for us. I find that there are areas of our work that overlap with other areas. And so when we see that out of the gate, we might be able to create either temporary task force or maybe focus the efforts in one particular group so that we don't end up having two people working on the same thing. I also think that this is an opportunity for some routine reporting. So certainly the Senate has committee work that we're required to do as part of our 10+1 obligations. Ed Code says, Title V says that we have some responsibilities and that we take care of those. But then we need to communicate the work product that is the result of those efforts. And while we have our normal processes for communicating them, I think that this provides some opportunities for groups that might not normally come in contact with our work product to be aware of it. And one of the most, I think, refreshing things about this process was just the willingness and the eagerness of PIO to participate in every single council so that they understand what we're doing, they deal with the public, they can be ambassadors for all of our work with the public, and then help us to market our efforts in a more meaningful and intentional way. I see the challenge for us as faculty is with the appointments. Who's going to sit on these teams and what should be the qualities and characteristics that we're looking for there? I'm taking my cabinet out to dinner tomorrow night, partially to discuss, you know, our executive cabinet. We have committee chairs. In at least one case, they've been identified as sitting on a team. But when it says at large, would it naturally be best to place a subcommittee chair in those positions? That can sometimes be a lot for a committee chair because they've already accepted this additional responsibility and then now having to serve on a team. So what might be best and what's practical are still things that I think we need to kind of figure out. I do think, though, that one of the opportunities here, and I forget who mentioned it, but when we're talking about drafting the opinion of the constituency, I do think that that is something that is important here. So when we talk about the information moving forwards and backwards, so not just up to the CEO or to the board, but then back to the various constituent groups through their representatives, I think that's an important piece of this. Because if I'm a faculty appointment on a PAT team, for example, I need to reflect the opinion of the faculty. Certainly I've been appointed and my judgment has been trusted. But there are times, just like any of us who sit in any representative group, we have to go back and we have to get input from our constituents. And I think that's an obligation as I recruit for these positions, ensuring that they kind of understand that it's not just their professional expertise that's being relied upon, but then their willingness to go out and solicit input from faculty in general, but also impacted parties, right? So
I do believe that the opportunity for transparency is very, it significantly improves our governance structure and decision-making from where we have been in the past. We're fortunate as a Senate to have our own sorts of responsibilities, but when we get into collegial consultation in groups where we all work together, I do think that this new model affords us a better opportunity for communication. I would argue that last thing I'll say, for anybody whose committee was not listed up there, I can't even tell you how many versions of committees we decided to represent or not represent. We have thought about all of your committees and where you might live. So if you have questions, I'm happy to tell you where I think your work product naturally lends itself, but just suffice it to say, no decisions have been made about eliminating anything right out of the gate. There were some low-hanging fruits, super obvious things, committees that hadn't met in years and whose charters have been absorbed by other things. But as it stands right now, if you are currently serving on a Senate subcommittee or as a faculty representative on a collegial consultation committee, your role and your responsibility is intact. Have I missed any? Okay, you're up.
Okay. Ditto plus. I don't think anyone here would be surprised if I said that the dynamics on campus have changed greatly over the past year or several months. We are doing less with less, as Jason likes to say. So when you look at a model like this, I think you think, oh, well, you know, we've had other initiatives, we've had other things that we've done in the past. It looks like we're adding stuff, not streamlining stuff. But basically, what I want you to take home from this, at least for classified anyway, is that this is the scaffolding that will allow us to start doing that internal work of looking at where efficiencies can be made. These bodies, various bodies, will look to the bodies that report up to them and say, is this something that's actually productive? Are we creating useful work for this district and for the people who work in it and for our students? And they'll be able to provide that feedback, and hopefully, maybe not in the first couple months, you won't necessarily see changes. All the processes will be intact. Yes, we've talked about that, but give this model some time, and I think you'll see that number from 80 committees drop down to 50 committees or something of that nature, based on the different bodies that are now going to be appointed in place to be reviewing and holding those groups accountable. We talked a lot about accountability in this discussion. There was a question about who's going to hold the CEO accountable. Well, I'll tell you, when there are those opportunities for feedback, I know for certain that when we've had opportunities for feedback in the past, some of them haven't been filled out well, I understand that. Yes, and some of them haven't been filled out completely. But when we look at things like the climate survey, all right, that was feedback. But it did lead to some accountability, I think, and it's still leading to some accountability because we're still changing and hiring consultants and the rest of it. That paper trail, I think, is really critical in this model, that you'll be able to see, yes, David could go off on a limb, and even though the academic senate said this was really bad, and here's why it's really bad, here's who it's going to hurt, and Lisa says the same thing, and her people say the same thing, and David says, I'm going to just do it anyway. Sure, he could do that. He could say, I'm going to use my power of authority as CEO to do this. But this time it's going to be different because right next to it could be myself at the board report saying, here's the feedback that our group gave. I just want the board to realize we didn't agree with this, and here's why we didn't agree with it as a group. In other words, accountability, I think, is important, that you take ownership in making sure that thing is accountable. Don't just let it be something that happens because you hope it happens, right? You have to be willing to stand up for the things that you believe in and support them, and also if you have criticisms, be able to speak freely and say those things. I think that what this model does is it allows more avenues for productive feedback, criticism, and support for different ideas on campus, and both in a very neutral way. One of the ways that we did a lot of governance before was very top-down or bottom-up, however you want to call it. But the meat and potatoes of this model is that purple group, that shared governance council group, right? Because it goes up to the chairs of those teams, and those are really led by vice presidents, but then it comes back down again in a way that it hasn't before to say, okay, well, Lisa, myself, and David are tri-chairs, but our appointees on that group are gonna have a co-equal voice in analyzing these different proposals. And we're gonna be able to submit something that's gonna stick with that project all the way either up the model or to send it backwards. The model works in both directions, and that's not necessarily something that we've had in the past either, right? So if our groups all have this harsh feedback, one of the things that I think David could do is say, well, I got this, there's a lot of harsh feedback. It would be quite reasonable for him to say, let's send it back a level for continued development. And I think that that's a really important aspect as well. So in the end, the Classified Senate will be making appointments with Andrea Barnier, our CSEA president, and those seats will now have a voice in a way that I don't think they've been able to have before, and be able to create that feedback together. And so one of the questions we had, last thing I'll say is one of the questions that was brought up was about the open-ended and should it be optional. Like I said, the people we appoint, Andrea and I will hold accountable to make sure that they are filling this out. I can see that we will probably select someone who's like the writer, and then, our process might be like, oh, let's look at a draft of that, and then you have maybe 2 weeks to submit it. You're not just doing it on the spot. You're getting time to digest that project, provide that feedback that will travel with that project up and down the system. The other thing is, don't get scared by this model. It's a lot. We've been working on it for almost a year now. Don't get scared at all, because the only thing that you need to take home from this today, I think, is really there's going to be a button that you can click to submit an idea, and it'll walk you through how to submit that proposal, and then you'll be given follow-up guidance. Yes, it's true in the background. It goes to an email, Daleen and David, and then they process it, and then they direct it one different. You don't have to be responsible for every dynamic of this model. You just have to know that if you're going to submit something, take ownership in it, know that you're going to be someone consulted from the start to the finish of this project. You might have to come into the shared governance model and do a presentation. You might have to select someone else to do the presentation on your behalf because you don't really know how to carry it out. But it's a collaborative model, and I really appreciate the team letting the Classified Senate participate in designing it. That's another thing, right? It's not just that we're doing this model, it's also we're part of creating the model itself. So that in and of itself is a really good sign that we're moving to a really healthy place in this district. And I'd like to see that continue. So give us some time. There's going to be some questions we don't have answers to. There's going to be some trial and error in the first couple of months here. But in time, we're going to iron out those glitches. And I think what we're going to end up with is a much more collaborative model for a district where everyone feels like their voice can make a sustained impact. Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's a hard act to follow. I just want to say one thing. So there's a lot of routine business that we do on the faculty side that unfortunately or fortunately impacts everybody, right? So common course numbering, I'm just going to throw this out there. I know I said the word. Okay. So not our choice, right? But has significant impacts on everybody that encounters students, which is pretty much all of us, right? So while we don't have any say in whether or not we do it, talking amongst the various constituent groups, what's happening, what's coming next, what does this mean for student services, how we're gonna, convey this information to current students, returning students, all of these things. That is where I see this model being so particularly helpful, because we get caught up in the actual curriculum piece, but there is a larger impact to this district when we think about these kinds of things. And this was nobody's idea. This was not a project initiation form. This just happened, right? And so I think this is where, if you think about what these teams, the routine business might look like, that could be a matter where those sorts of conversations are being had. Thank you.
I turned you off.
I just wanted to follow up with what Michael was talking about with, and it goes back to Jeremy's point about accountability. Been now 13 months since I've been in this position, and I'll probably make some comments like this on Friday. That is, I've learned a lot, obviously. And I never stopped learning. But one of my primary takeaways is how different everybody's experience is here at this college. So it's different within faculty. If you're someone from biology, your life is different than political science, okay? If you're faculty, an adjunct has a different life than full-time. Faculty have a different life than classified, right? Administrators don't all have the same life. VPs have a whole different set of responsibilities that managers don't, and so forth. It's not diminishment, it's just that everyone has their own lived experience here. Intellectually, I've always known that, but I will tell you emotionally and intellectually, I can see more than I ever thought I would, the challenges, not just of this college, of any college, to build that kind of collective understanding that all of us should have toward the ultimate goal of, instruction and teaching our students. But we have different perspectives and we all have a certain amount of information. What I'm getting at is that everyone is entitled to their opinion and their own frustration about whether or not a proposal goes through, makes it or doesn't. But what I hope is a byproduct of this is that people, if not emotionally, but just intellectually understand. And if you have a leader that explains things, why they decided what they did and it didn't come out in the way you wanted, that you can understand it. You might not like it. I hope that this model produces rational decisions. That's the hope, right? That it's a moderating kind of system, that it doesn't allow extremes. It doesn't allow unilateral. Ultimately, it's the CEO's decision. We get it. Democracy, there's kind of a democratic process of, along the way up until the CEO. Democracy is about learning how to lose, right? That's what it is, learning how to lose. And what I'm saying is people are going to be happy with some decisions and unhappy with others. I hope the byproduct is over years' time that people really get to see through narratives and explanations that, oh, there's a larger set of reasons why the decision came out the way it did. They might not like it, but hopefully they understand it. Anyway, thank you.
Question.
My question is, what is the role of the three unions on campus in this model? And I'll give you an example. As an item is working its way through this model, where is there someone to be a flag that's to say, hey, that conflicts with one of the collective bargaining agreements on campus, or that's potential working conditions issue? Because in my opinion, it can't just be admin or the other non-union representatives in this model, because they may not have the specific expert knowledge on the contract.
That's a great point, because what you've done is you've narrowed down the issue of what we think the role of unions are. So in other words, there was an early on discussion about should unions be a part of this? Unions that are not part of the district, right? And if they were a part of the decision making, that they would be quasi bargaining in that way. So you are right. The role of the union is to be vigilant about decisions that are made at different levels. What we're hoping is that the appointment process is such that people that wear dual hats, right? This is similar for College Policy Council, right? That there is no provision in College Policy Council to have someone from the unions, but we think it's in the best interest of those stakeholder groups to make sure someone is appointed there. That can be the case. And I think when it comes down to those groups, we know faculty they have a union and they have a Senate. And so the Senate is part of the governance. And I think it's really up to, this goes back to Lisa's point, which is who should be appointed and how should faculty and all of those consequences be represented in the model. So we don't build in officially union representation because they're not part of the district, because we don't want to get caught in a quasi-negotiating realm. But we do have to have that overlap so that exactly what you pointed out is exactly the role of faculty and classified in this, so that they identify collective bargaining issues. So we are aware of that. And I think that goes through the appointment process.
I'll just take this mic. And that's related to another question that we had come online. Communication is key in this process. Groups that are not here necessarily named are classified, or excuse me, college assistants, short-term hourly. But obviously decisions that are made will impact other folks that work on campus. So just like we ask in program review, we ask the same here, that if a decision is going to impact particular groups, that communication is made to those groups. So we have a lot of folks that are represented on the project advancement teams, on shared governance council, and the communication regarding any impact for folks in their jobs would be communicated back. So we ask the same in this model. So when are folks meeting? This is just a quick at a glance before I dive into the detail. This just helped us kind of say, when are we meeting, so that we have a standard meeting schedule. So the project advancement team leads will meet once a month. You can see there on Mondays. We plugged in PAC B, Curriculum, Academic Senate, just because we know those are major meetings that we needed to not, and College Policy Council, to make sure that we did not step on top of in terms of planning. And then you'll see Shared Governance Council is every fourth Monday. And then on Tuesdays, those are kind of our big meeting day, where you have planning and institutional effectiveness, student success and inclusive excellence, and operations. They are meeting now. We have holidays, we have different start times for the semester in time, so we had to work around that. So we developed our year-long schedule, which this will be online. Do not feel like you need to take a screenshot. We will provide this to you. We will be putting it on the website as well. But each one is meeting, so you can see color coded. So the light kind of green at the top, student success, inclusive excellence. You can see they meet in September. Every group is September, October, November, and then a little bit in December because of the holiday situation. And in some cases, we have to share time with each other. So for November 18th, you can see planning and institutional effectiveness will split their time with operations, because it was important that groups met at least once in the month. And in order to make that happen, we had to partner and share our time. So that happens a couple of times that you'll see on the schedule. But we're going all the way through to June 1st, with the last meeting being June 1st for Shared Governance Council. And these are always 3 to 5 p.m., Canyons Hall 201. And then the project advancement team leads are responsible for sending out the Zoom link for their meetings and the folks that are serving on their team. So we mentioned year one. This past year was our remodeling phase. And with that remodeling, college planning team will no longer operate as it was. That is gone. IE Quantity Squared, that committee also, we kind of split. Student success and inclusive excellence took the inclusive excellence part of the IE Quantity Squared, and planning took the institutional effectiveness part of IE Quantity Squared. So that's how the spirit of IE Quantity Squared lives on. Remember, that committee existed for 10 years. And so how was that the spirit of it? Folks liked it. They liked kind of the way we approached the discussions. And so how does that live on? And that's how we're doing that. In year two, which is going to be this coming year, this is our implementing and refining. So we're implementing the new model. We are also participating in an integrated planning framework, which you will hear more about at opening day. And that's to really create that framework of planning for the college, which aligns very nicely with this new model. We are building informative assessment check-ins with the campus community fall, possibly around November, and then looking at probably March, and then an end of year kind of review. We want to have an opportunity like we're doing now for folks to come together, ask questions, hear updates. And then year three will be kind of expanding scope and continued refinement. So assessment of where there are opportunities to streamline committee operations, and then begin our strategic plan for 2027-30. So our current strategic plan will be ending, and we will need to start that new one. So we'll be doing that work. That ties in nicely with the conclusion of the integrated planning framework effort that we'll be undertaking this year. So that will position us very well to be thinking about the new strategic plan, looking at program review and any refinement we need to make to program review, both on the administrative and academic side. And there we are. That is it. Unless there are more questions or comments, Lisa, you're up first.
Just because I keep getting text messages, you cannot propose a new program through this process. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you.
Wait, I actually,
Curriculum, no academic programs through this process. There is a process for that and it is not this one.
there was another question. Is the form live? Yes, the form is live. If you go on the internet right now, you can access it. Go right ahead. And if you want to test it, fine, just please put test in there. So I don't try to like route something that you're really just testing. Fine to take a look at. You can even take a look at Form 2, which is the process where the project advancement team forwards it to the Shared Governance Council. You're welcome to take a look at it. Those are available. Same with the last stage, which is where the constituent groups provide their feedback on a project. Those forms are out there. We just ask, only do Form 1 because that's really for the initiator. And then Form 2 is really for the project advancement team chairs. Form 3 is for those who are serving on the Shared Governance Council, but you're welcome to take a look. You can see all of the sections of those forms. David, did you have? Yes, but we get back to you. They just want to see me try to run.
I just wanted to say that participation is going to be really important in this. It's really great to look at a model and look at all the work that's been done and go, hey, this is awesome. I'm excited for my coworkers to participate in this or someone else to volunteer. So it's going to be really important because all of you have expertise. All of you have something that you bring to the table. This model was not created so that people could go to another meeting and sit and listen to someone talk to them. This was created so that you have an impact in the decision-making process here at College of the Canyons, and that's going to require people to step up if you are asked to serve through your constituent group, or if you are asked, they ask for volunteers. Please consider volunteering because this is where you can really make a difference.
Nicely done, and I will thank you for that because I think we're an academic institution and we're filled with such smart people. And if we don't leverage that, then we're hurting ourselves.
There's a question online.
Okay, so online.
Is there a set standard for the timing of the decision making?
Here you go, one more.
Oh, I do. Is there a set standard for the timing of the decision making?
At time.
I think what they're talking about is from the moment it's proposed to when, and I think that is completely contextual. It could be a multi-year proposal. It could be something that it is agreed upon that it is a really good idea, but we'll have to wait till next year. And we're talking with business services and we realize the funding next year might be a better year. It's all contextual based on the proposal.
Exactly. If you don't mind, if you'll take it back to Jason, then I think that, but I will say it's exactly right. But along the way, as things get, if there is a pause that is taken because additional work needs to be done, that's the communication that goes back to that project initiator or the project steward. So you know where it is. So we're going to take Jason's question. And then I know I saw a hand pop up in the middle, but I'm going to go over here until, I'll come to you in a minute.
Could you describe the format of the Shared Governance Council meetings a little bit more, like how the agendas will be distributed, what will be included in the agendas that's publicly available to everyone? For example, all the forms that were sent to the Governance Council members, is that available to everybody else? And so on. I'm assuming it's an open meeting too.
Right, it's not a Brown Act meeting. Go ahead. Oh, it's an open meeting. You want to come, you want to listen to the members discuss that. It's not closed, right? Everything's transparent. In terms of the charter, I'm not sure, I can't remember what we put in the charter, Daleen, in terms of dissemination of information. Because each of the PATs has a charter and so does shared governance, just like.
Yeah, so some of those exact details will be communicated out, but there will be a communication. I will tell you right now, each of those teams has their own channel where we are using Microsoft Teams for them to communicate within their team. And right now they're working out, kind of how we're going to make that available. But the goal is to be transparent about the items that are coming through and the information associated with those items. Including any submission that comes through the form, as well as their meeting minutes and agendas. So we will make that available, absolutely. That's an important part of this process.
I just want to be clear about something I think that Wendy brought up earlier, and that is, are any of the current processes that the college does going to be applied through this model? I'm thinking of things like program review and academic staffing that I'll say, as myself as faculty, have been less than transparent here in the past. So that's my question.
Well, let me jump in first and then Daleen can jump in. I will say something in the opposite in reverse, and Lisa mentioned it earlier, but that is the Program Viability Committee, which has been around, I don't know, 12 years or so, 10 years. It is something that was a framework for us to reference because of the intention behind it. The intention is for people to go there with an academic program, to propose it, or an existing one to modify it, to revitalize it, to discontinue it. But the whole idea is to have stakeholders there from all groups that can speak to whether we have the resources for that proposal or not and communicate that effectively. The truth is that I think it's a fabulous model that I think informed this model, okay, to a great extent. And yet, all these years later, we continue to tweak that. Where's Garrett Reek? Thank you, Garrett Reek, for all your years sharing program viability, which is a beast, right? And it takes a lot, and I certainly had my own hand in that from years back. So I will just say that we do have committees that actually are trying to mimic this, that in certain ways we mimic some of that. But I think it depends on the subject matter of the committee. Wouldn't you agree, Dave?
I agree, and I'm going to give you an example. I'd love to hear more, later about things that are not as transparent regarding, I think you mentioned the program review process. One of the things that I'm going to be doing is looking across all of the submissions so that we can see what trends are emerging or themes are emerging from program review. But if there is a part of that, I would, encourage you to reach out to Erica as the faculty representative for program review and share that feedback so we can see how does this work in the new model, what information needs to be brought forward, because really this is about improving our processes. And where things are not transparent, we need to know where those blind spots are, where things need to be improved. So please reach out. We may not know exactly right now how it's going to fit in that conversation, but we don't want it to get lost. So it's about communicating that to us, if you don't mind. And then I think, if you don't mind.
So my question goes to how light, I'll call it, are or is it okay if the submissions are? So something as simple as, I think there should be an adult hourly appreciation day. Would that go through this model, or is that just not quite serious enough?
The Mansour rule is, when in doubt, submit a request. That's the rule. And so we don't have judgment on whether it's a district-wide serious issue that has heft, or whether it's something that is lighthearted and maybe not critical to district operations. You submit and we follow through with it.
I mean, we have other ideas that have been kind of floated this past year. And it's been kind of fun, and we were in our planning meeting saying, well, actually, that should probably go through the model, and it will. So there are similar ideas. There's no judgment on whether that's, I think you said serious, but there's no judgment on that. If it's going to have a district-wide impact, put it through. And like we said, when in doubt, submit, or if you're still hesitant, please reach out to me and I'll help you through that process. We did get a question about the circle, the yellow circle that's on the far right. You see after Shared Governance Council. That is there to indicate that if the CEO needs additional information or needs to consult with any of those representative groups, they may. So that's what that is there to indicate.
I want to jump in and go back to Connie's point, which is one of the things I think we realized early on was that there was the do's and don'ts, and which is, I think, did we say normal day-to-day operations? Is that how we characterize it? That they don't go through this. And I think what we know is that managers, vice presidents, they have a responsibility to run areas, they have budgets, and they can't do that effectively if somehow or another they're waiting for everything, every decision they make to go through this process. It's not going to happen. So just to the point is that someone might have something that has heft, or it might be lighthearted and fun. But it might fall into a category where someone it is related to a day-to-day operational decision of a manager or a VP. It might not be something that is appropriate for the shared governance model. You'll find that out once you submit it. But I just want to be clear on that, because one of the things that we realized is that administration has to be able to function day in and day out and not be crippled by this in a way inappropriately. And so we're going to make sure that you can run your offices in the way that you need to with normal, regular business. And we're going to, in the first and second and third year, we're going to tease that out and understand what that looks like in terms of proposals. And I think, again, over time, just like program viability, it's going to be distilled down to a better understanding. And then basically leadership of the model, like in anything in the institution, they have to transfer that. As someone said at a meeting last week, that tribal knowledge, as we say, needs to be transferred to other leaders that take over, and then our PAT liaisons or team leads, I should say, et cetera, et cetera.
So in terms of kind of next steps, we have obviously opening day on Friday, where you'll hear a very, very shortened version of what we just went through. But then I will also be at Academic Senate on September 11th for a brief update. And at that time, we will have had the first 2 meetings of the planning and institutional effectiveness team, as well as student success and inclusive excellence. So we'll have some preliminary updates on kind of.
I don't know who will be there from faculty yet, but those meetings will take.
So we are, so the word is flexible and adaptable. And so that's what we're doing. We're starting somewhere. If we're getting started. We know there's some routine matters already. We have an accreditation midterm coming. That's definitely going to be an information item on planning and institutional effectiveness. I mentioned the C plan, the student equity and achievement plan, that has to start making its way through. That will definitely be an agenda item that Dr. Alvarado, Dr. Rice have on that particular one for their team. So we already know, like right there, those are 2 meetings that are happening right away. We already know we've got some routine items. It will also be an introduction, like getting the team together to kind of talk through, look at the charter, talk through how things are going to operate with some routine matters. So that's coming up, and then look for additional opportunities to engage through the formative assessment, which we'll do around November. But we got to lean in together, and I thank you for committing your afternoon to being here to learn about the model. Those of you online too, thank you for being here. And let's do it together, and let's just commit to leaning in, being flexible, and providing that feedback, asking questions early so that we can address them, and join us. So thank you.
Nice job, David.
Take nap, coffee.